All right, let's switch gears. We're going to do a little Notre Dame women's basketball. We've got some mailbag questions that we're going to answer from the Champions Lounge that some of our subscribers submitted earlier today. You can still submit some questions if you'd like in the chat. We're going to come back. We've got rapid fire coming up. And in fact, Joseph asking the question about Chad Bowden and the comments that he made about Lincoln Riley, that will lead off rapid fire. So don't worry, we are going to get to that. The comments that Chad Bowden made about Lincoln Riley and kind of that lob across the bow at Marcus Freeman there. Again, we got all ACC honors today for women's basketball, and Hannah Hidalgo is Notre Dame's second ever ACC Player of the Year. Do you know who the only other ACC Player of the Year is for Notre Dame, Jess, off the top of your head?
I would have to say Arike Agumbawale.
Close, but not quite. Joel Lloyd, 2014, 2015. So the only other ACC Notre Dame ACC Women's Basketball Player of the Year, Hannah Hidalgo, Joel Lloyd, and
She
Hidalgo
has to
also.
be the only person to ever win Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year.
That's right. The only Notre Dame player ever to claim that. Only two other players in ACC history have been named Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. So quite a haul for Hannah Hidalgo, getting ACC Women's Basketball Player of the Year. Olivia Miles named to the first team. Sonia Citron also named to the first team. Citron also named to the all-defensive team. Leah Tu King got second team, and Kate Koval was named to the all-freshman team. Now, you were saying earlier that you had some thoughts that you wanted to throw in here. Does it have anything to do with this all-conference stuff?
Yeah, and I hope maybe some people aren't listening, but I have to put on my rational thinking hat here. And I know that, things aren't over yet and there's going to be the ACC tournament next week, and I think that's ultimately more important, but I think it's kind of a letdown to a degree that Notre Dame didn't win the ACC regular season championship, considering they have 3 first-team players, the Player of the Year and the Defensive Player of the Year. And whether you take that as scrutiny or what, I just think it's being blatantly obvious, or not obvious, truthful at the end of the day. And I still think it's, as a fan, to say that it was kind of a letdown to a degree, considering, again, you have three first team players, Player of the Year, and all 3 of those players are going to get drafted, besides Hannah, because she's got to come back for another year. But Maddie Westbelt wasn't named on any of those lists. She's going to be a first round draft pick this season as well. So I don't know. It's just, I know that down the stretch things got a little bit hard, and they had a rough kind of 2 weeks to end the season here, and playing a schedule that included North Carolina State, Miami. I think it was either Duke, North Carolina, and obviously Florida State at the end of the season. And you could throw Cal in there as well when they came to the pavilion. It just didn't end well, and I think that there's obviously redemption for the ACC tournament, and I think that's ultimately going to, if they can win that, maybe get them back to that 1 seed range. But I just feel kind of let down at the end of the day that they didn't win the ACC regular season championship.
Well, remember, they did technically win it. They just had to share it with NC State. They were co-champs for the regular season, but because of head-to-head, they ended up as the number 2 seed. NC State was the number 1 seed. They both went 16-2 in conference play. So they did technically win the ACC regular season, but they did it. Yeah, they tied, but they still are co-champs. They are considered ACC champions for this season, even if it's co-champs. So just, I know it's a little bit of a technicality, but they are. Michael says he doesn't care about winning a conference, just win the national championship. And I mean, that's, like this, like you were talking about the way like the schedule played out. They definitely, it was like they were up against it a little bit in that, those last 2 weeks, because not only did they play a Monday night game against a ranked Duke team rather than Sunday, because again, ACC women's basketball, their days are Sunday and Thursday. But for TV purposes, the Notre Dame Duke game was played on a Monday night instead, and then you go on the road for 2 games after that at Miami and then at NC State. And obviously that at NC State is where they lost their first game and saw the 19-game winning streak come to a close, but then they come home and lose to Florida State. I think the most important thing is they rebounded. They kind of got, things turned around a little bit. We saw some inkling of that against Louisville, and now you kind of flush reset, and it's on to the postseason. Now you get the conference tournament coming up this week. Then you're going to get about a week and a half to rest after that, and then you're going to get to host NCAA tournament games after that. So
yeah,
nice little reset. I get what you're saying. I mean, it is a disappointment because they were looking like they were going to cruise right through everything and everybody and, win that thing outright. And I think when you look at how the coach of the year voting turned out, Wes Moore, the NC State head coach, got voted ACC coach of the year, and Niele Ivey was the runner-up. She was in second place. If Notre Dame had run the table, I think that Niele Ivey would have been
for sure
the coach of the year for the second time in the last 3 years.
I mean, when you tie and NC State beat you head-to-head, I think that's ultimately what decided coach of the year. And I guess maybe I should rephrase a bit to a degree because I agree. I could care less about the regular season championship, and I want to see more postseason success and obviously playing for a national championship. I think the part that was frustrating for me was this is the time of year where you want to kind of be playing your best basketball and not be stumbling and lose 2 games in a row, especially conference games. And so them stumbling now, a repercussion of that was losing the ACC. That was kind of, what came of that. And so,
but again, they didn't lose the ACC. They just shared the ACC.
Right. And again, I wish that they could have just, for my own kind of personal being like I just wanted to see them continue to ride that wave into the tournament, right? And so and it's ultimately up to them to decide how to respond to these 2 losses and maybe not ultimately, obtaining a goal that you might have had. But if you can reset, recalibrate, and make a run and win a national championship, then it's history. I don't care about the rest of it,
Some of the stuff that you're talking about is tied into a question or two in the mailbag. So let's jump into this mailbag. What do you think? Some great questions posed on the Champions Lounge. I'll let you kind of throw them out there, and then we'll get into them. Go ahead.
With the departure of the big 3, that being Olivia, Maddie, and Sonia, who do you think will step up next season?
There's going to be a lot that need to step up next season. I mean, you still have the player of the year in Hidalgo, and it's going to be like Kassan Prosper. There's going to be a lot on her now, I think, next year, and there's going to be a lot on Kate Koval as well. Prosper has shown that she's a good defensive player, but there's some refinement I think that needs to come with the offensive game. Like she's shown at times that she can score, but we just haven't seen that consistently. Like continue to work on that 3-point shot and do some things putting the ball. Like she's someone who I think could be a like get downhill, get to the basket, with the length that she's got and that kind of thing. And obviously Koval, good defensive game, but it's like she needs to continue to work on that offensive game. And Andre said KK. I mean, KK Bransford and Kylie Watson are both going to be back next year. Well, potentially anyway, assuming.
Oh, wow. I forgot about KK Bransford.
Yeah. Like she's been out all season with injury, so she'll be back. So I think that really Prosper and Koval, I think, are the 2 who I look at the most. And then, getting Kylie Watson back, she was a good defensive player last year. And again, like they need to find more offensive consistency in the, in the post. And Koval and Watson, both give them some really good size and some opportunities to do some of that. Good question. Black Irish 864.
I love that picture.
Yes. All right, next question from Domer Grizz.
Domer Grizz. So you covered the top of the news. I know. Just trying to figure out where the question is. Sorry.
It starts with I know her response.
Okay. I know her response was, "I'm young, I'll live," when asked about her risky drives that end up too frequently with her crashing to the floor. But do you think Hannah's risks are worth it? This team would be in trouble if she got banged up going to the floor in traffic so much like that. Should she be looking to drive and kick a little more rather than drive and crash?
This came up last year as well because of that style that she's got, a little bit of a kamikaze getting in there in the paint at times. I mean, I think she just wants to do anything she can to win. And a lot of times those things happen because, like, she decides, look, I either need a basket or I need to get myself to the free throw line. And she's willing to give herself up like that. And like DJ is saying, she's not going to change. That's part of her game. So, she is young, and while like she is not the biggest player obviously at 5'6", and sometimes it does feel like she goes to the floor pretty hard, but I think that she thinks it's worth it, and I agree with DJ. She's not going to change, and I think that ultimately she's doing it for the good of the team. So I'm fine with it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's ultimately okay. And I think the biggest reason is she's not like a 6 foot, 200 pound guy crashing down on the floor. She's like 5'6", and
Yeah, that
again, I'm not going to speculate weight on Hannah
no,
Hidalgo,
but
but
it
she's much
lessens the
lighter.
impact when you're smaller like that. There's
Right.
not as much impact, and I think she knows how to go to the floor as well.
So I think that's the first part of it. And this question poses: should she be a drive and kick more so than a drive and crash? Um, I think Hannah's. I'm not really concerned about Hannah's crashing into the ground. I think against NC State and Florida State, I would have liked to see Hannah. The beginning of the game, I'm all okay if you're shooting jumpers and kind of figuring it out. But by the time the third and fourth quarter rolls around in a close game and your shot's not falling, and you have players like
Yeah,
Sonia Citron and Olivia Miles, I would like to see her kick the ball out and take less shots, less crashing to the floor in that regard. But I just think she needs to be more kind of self-reflective in how her game is going, and knowing that she has other All-Americans around her that she can work off of if things aren't going her way early on in a game.
right. And late in the game as well, I think, like you were alluding to, like the 4-on-1 situation where they didn't score against Florida State. I think that that really kind of exemplifies that. And she said after that game, was it after that game or actually I think it was after the Louisville game, when she came back out for the press conference after the Louisville game is when she said it. Basically, like they're not going to like she can't win a national championship alone. She still has to be able to, to, like you said, she has to know how the flow of the game is going, and when to attack and when to dish. And a 4-on-1 situation is the prime example of, okay, now is time to dish, because like, do I have to be the one that gets this basket, or like, are we better off as a team if I'm dishing because the defender is coming to me and I've got three other possibilities, all around me, and we're going to get a bucket if I dish this off. It's little things like that I think, like, she doesn't have to do it all the time. And I think that sometimes that's kind of stuck in her brain, that where she has thought that she needed to do it all. And I did think that it was significant that the other day against Louisville, she had 6 assists. The team had 14 assists. She had 6 of them, and so she, they were moving the ball better. They were a little bit more deliberate. They got other people involved, and they were able to win fairly handily when everything was all said and done. So I do think we're going to continue to see kind of a little bit different approach here now, post these 2 losses.
Ooh, who has been the unsung hero so far this year? Can I take the lead
I,
on this
I, had
one?
a, I had a feeling. I had a feeling you might want to go first with this one.
This
Go
is the
ahead.
easiest question I've been asked today. Leah King is the unsung hero on this team. I think that overall, like you said, they lack offensive production down in the post. I think Leah too is that kind of nice stretch option where she's not really a big, but she's not really a guard. But she plays hard. She plays like a big, and she plays tough. She's a double double machine most nights. And I just like the way she goes to work down there for being undersized. And I think without her, they would be even more undersized.
Wow. I just realized 15 players were named to the first team. Like I just actually counted them up. I thought it was only 10 that were going to be named to the first team, but there are 15. And Leah Tu King came in 16, 17, 18 in 19th place on the list. So she made the second team. So like if you look at that alone, you have to say that she is the most unsung player on this team. There's not like she was a first team all conference player at Pittsburgh last year, averaging a double double. And when they did the preseason voting, for all conference, she didn't land on preseason all conference because I think that everyone just assumed, well, you're coming to Notre Dame. Your numbers aren't going to be anywhere the same. She's like 11th in the nation in rebounding right now. Like that's not just the ACC. She is 11th in the nation in rebounding. She's one of a handful of players who are averaging a double double. And I'm fairly shocked because, when I filled out what we had to do with these ballots is you rank these players 1 through 25. And I think that I put Leah 2 like at number 7 or number 8 on mine. And again, like she came in overall by the vote of everyone who submitted their vote, she came in 19th place on this thing, which I think, again, it's like everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but like the Khadija Faye at Pittsburgh, she was a transfer from Texas. She's also averaging a double double. She essentially took Leah Tu King's spot at Pittsburgh, as like the only legitimate player on the Pittsburgh roster. And she ended up on the first team this year, because I think people probably figure, well, it's a bad team, but she's averaging a double double. She has to carry the load. And I think that it was definitely hard when you've got stars like Hidalgo and Miles and another great player like Sonia Citron, so you already had those three, and those three finished in the top 6 in the voting, all 3 of those players. So I think that, Leah 2 was a little bit of an afterthought when it came to some of the voting. So again, like when you look at everything she did, and like I think after Koval, she's the number 2 shot blocker on the team. And she's also deceptively, she's averaging over 2 steals per game as well. So like all the things that she does, averaging double-digit rebounds and double-digit scoring. She's got 12 double doubles. She's definitely the most unsung player on the team this year. All right. Boom. Next one.
What is your assessment of how well Hannah and Liv have blended this year, and are they the best backcourt in women's basketball? Is it even close?
I think that after the end, and I heard some of this conversation after the NC State game, and even after the Florida State game, there were the little rumblings from like some of the TV people and some other people like, well, NC State's actually got the best, guards in the country, and Florida State's, underrated, all this different kind of stuff. I mean, I think that it's worked really well because I think that the combination has brought out the best in both of them. Now, when it doesn't work for either one of them is obviously, what we were just talking about when they come up court and either one of them feels like, okay, it's time to just get the shot right now. You know what I mean? Like I've got to take the shot now. But I think that, Liv is typically looking to pass first. And I think that has helped bring out even another dimension of Hidalgo and what she's done. Now, in terms of the best backcourts in the country, again, like USC is a different team right now. They've beaten UCLA twice in the last couple of weeks, and obviously you've got Juju Watkins. So like, how much that skews it, I don't know. I mean, I'll just say it's definitely one of the best backcourts in the country, and ultimately we're going to find out how good here in a couple of weeks when this tournament starts. In terms of how they match up against some of these other teams in the country.
I don't have much to add to this one.
Okay. Tommy wants to know, what are the heights of
Just
the
know
starting
Sonia
five?
Citron's like 6'1".
Yeah, Citron is 6'1". Hidalgo is 5'6". Leah Two King is
6'3".
6 foot. No, Leah Two King is 6 foot tall. Maddie Westbeld is 6'3", and I'm trying to remember Miles. I think Miles might be 5'11", or is she 6 foot? 5'10" is what they list her at. So,
Wow. Someone said that the ESPN commentator for the Notre Dame Louisville game said Notre Dame's backcourt was the best until basically North Carolina State beat them.
right, because we're going off one game, because one game decides
at
that.
home
And
at noon.
and that is where some of that was coming from. Now, grain of salt, Deb Antonelli is the announcer who said that. She's never liked Olivia Miles, so remember that.
Yeah, that's when all that controversy came up like a
Right.
year or two ago.
A couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like she'll probably never say that publicly, but she doesn't. There's something there that she holds against Olivia Miles, probably because Miles pushed back against her, and Antonelli thinks that no one is supposed to push back
She's the gospel.
on anything she says. And she went to NC State because, like,
there it is.
Yes, she's an NC State alum.
Like, don't get me wrong, those guards for NC State.
She didn't want to say that before that game, but once NC State won, that's where she went to. So again, look, like, you're going to base everything on one game, one matchup, and you're going to say now they're the best in the conference. Okay, well, let's see if we get a rematch and see what happened, because remember, they split their two games last year. Yeah.
You got to realize too, like, those NC State guards are good, and they're going to be first-round picks, like
and two of them are on the first team, and another one, the sophomore Zoe Brooks was named the conference's most improved player as well.
So there's a ton of talent on that team, and that's why these two teams tied, and they're pretty evenly matched across the board. But if we're taking a neutral site, not at North Carolina State, not at noon, not for ESPN Game of the Week, I'm gonna take Notre Dame. That game still went to double overtime on North Carolina State's home court. So I'm like you. Give me a neutral site. I kind of want them to play again, because I think Notre Dame deserves that redemption at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think so. I really want to see it. I mean, he coached the better game that day. His players played a little bit better. Again, it was a double overtime. So again, like, we're making all we're drawing all these huge conclusions out of a double overtime game played in a road hostile environment. I said it before, like, that was some of the best atmosphere for a women's college basketball game that I have ever seen. Give them all the credit in the world for that. But that also played a part, in how that game turned out. Their crowd was a huge factor in that game. And, they had College game day and the whole thing. Like that, like the crowd that Notre Dame just had for a rivalry game against Louisville, it was nowhere near the atmosphere that NC State had for that game. Not even in the same ballpark. Not even close.
Man, these questions were rolling in at 8:30 in the morning. Do you think the late season losses will galvanize the team and motivate them to glory? Or are they signs that this team isn't as dominant as we hoped, and they might be in trouble come tourney time? Can I go first on this one?
Sure, go ahead.
I think that's ultimately up to them. if it's going to galvanize and motivate them. And I think that's why that's the job of a coach as well, a head coach to rally the troops. I can say these things because I'm a basketball coach now. And so that's on Neil Ivy's shoulders. And how the team responds is up to the players. Are they going to be galvanized? Are they going to be motivated? I will say though, I don't necessarily think that these aren't signs that the team isn't as dominant or they might be in trouble. I've said throughout the season, I think Notre Dame has a good bag of ways that they can beat you. I don't think they're going to beat you the same way every game. And I think Florida State and North Carolina State did a good job of kind of exposing some of the weaknesses that Notre Dame has. And I would rather see those weaknesses put on blast in the regular season than in the Elite Eight or the Final Four. So me being glass half full, I'm kind of glad these happen now because this gives Neil Ivy and staff time to kind of game plan if these kind of situations come up during the tournament. And the situation that I'm kind of most directly speaking to is, Notre Dame obviously has really good guards, but they're undersized. So if teams start, driving down the lane and getting to the basket, that's where they're going to be in trouble. So I think Neil Ivy and the coaching staff now have to figure out a way to, counteract that if it does come up, in the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament.
Credit Wes Moore, the NC State coach, for really being the first coach all season to decide that, that's what he was going to go after. Like, he felt like they could get down a hill and beat Notre Dame's guard off the dribble. And, did they get some help by getting to the free throw line on a lot of those? Sure they did. But you still had,
that's part of driving. You get to go to the free throw line.
But what it also did, Florida State copied that in the next game, and Notre Dame wasn't able to adjust. And then finally, Louisville, they tried to copy that as well. They did a little bit of it in the first quarter, but Notre Dame put up on their Instagram and their social media platforms, they've got Kate Koval and Liza Carlin with some of the the work that they were doing defensively. Once Carlin took that charge and the block by Koval, Louisville was not able to continue that. And that's what Notre Dame needs, is just get that help defense from the forwards like that to step up and help cut some of that stuff off. That's a big lesson learned by Notre Dame. They were able to, teams weren't doing nearly as much of that prior to the NC State game. So that was kind of an unexposed, I won't even say weakness, but just like an unexposed facet that they never really had to push themselves quite as much. And I think that that's ultimately what those two games did. They were definitely able to get away with some different things during that 19-game win streak. And now, after losing those couple of games, getting humbled a little bit, I mean, you saw a different approach out there Sunday against Louisville. And let's not forget that, Louisville is still a well-coached team. They are still a rival. He had a game plan. Yeah, and for the second game in a row that they played this season, it was a very close first half, but ultimately Notre Dame was able to make better adjustments and make better plays with the best backcourt in the ACC and one of the best backcourts in the nation, and ultimately end up winning going away, in spite of, like the game was out of hand basically in the last minute and 15 seconds when you've got some subs and stuff like that in there, and Louisville scored the last 7 points of the game. So, I mean, ultimately I think that it really can be a big silver lining that they took those lumps in the regular season. And now, again, you get the reset. You're going into the postseason. You'd rather find that stuff out now and have to settle for sharing a conference championship than find it out in a couple of weeks in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, and ultimately really, truly spoil your season because, there's still too much to play for right now. So it's not nearly as big a deal.
I mean, there's still everything to play for. The only reason why you have the regular season is one, to get seeding for both. Well, not even one, it's to get seeding for both tournaments, the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament. So, and regardless, you're going to have to play a top team at some point. So if you're a 1 or a 2, it's, again, I would rather be battle tested and go through a hard regular season, and where you fall in the NCAA tournament with the skill that they have should take care of itself.
Yeah.
Mailbag. How hard will Notre Dame hit the transfer portal in the offseason?
I mean, they're going to have to hit it pretty hard because, again, you're going to lose Miles, Citron, Westbeld, King, and Carlin. That's 5 significant players right there. You bring back Hidalgo, Prosper, Koval, and then you add Bransford and Watson, who are both hurt this year. So you've still got 5. And then you're bringing in Leah Macy, the freshman from Kentucky, like she's basically kind of the Westbeld, kind of mold, that type of player. So that's 6. So I mean, I think they're going to have to add probably at least 2 guards, one of them with some point guard skills to give you some depth at point guard, if not even, depending on who it is, playing along with Hannah Hidalgo, just like Olivia Miles did this year. So, a couple of guards, you need one who's going to be a shooter who can defend as well, and then you're going to have to bring in probably at least 1 forward next year. So at least 3, if not 4 players, I think that they look to go out and get in the portal next year, or this off season.
Yeah, I'm not going to really add anything to that. You know the roster better than I do, and kind of what's remaining, what's going to be coming back, what's going to need. I've never seen this person before, but thank you, AFMOS. Do you think the mag and hoopla over achieving #1 ranking and all that resulted in the team, coaches including, letting off the gas and not having that Kobe or Jordan mindset of crushing all opponents through working every waking hour to be their best? Essentially, that they didn't have some weaknesses that they needed to keep grinding on in terms of strategy, opponent scouting, etc.
Yeah. Before I answer that, Kevin, thank you for the reminder. Emma Risch, she's been hurt for the better part of the last couple of years, and I did forget to include her on that list, and she's obviously a 3-point shooter. She's just got to get healthy because she's had multiple surgeries now on that hip. She had the hip surgery. It was like hip labrum surgery last year, and then they had to go in and clean it up this year. So yeah, she will be back, but again, like health status and all that different kind of stuff. So yeah, so we'll just kind of have to wait and see. So basically, did Notre Dame kind of get caught up in its own hype? Is that sort of the gist of the question?
Yeah, like it basically did it all get to them? The magazine, the #1 rating, the party they had down in Miami with all the former Notre Dame players, and we kind of talked about this a little bit. I think it's, I felt personally that when they brought in all those players and they talked to the Notre Dame team, that's all fine and dandy, but it's like you're kind of, in my opinion, creating thoughts of. And I'm trying to remember the way I kind of said this to you the other day when we were talking on the phone. It's like you kind of create self-doubt by them kind of telling you, all these ex-players telling you all the time of like, like what it takes and this is what it means to be a good team and these are the things you need to do. And it's like, well, we're on a 19-game winning streak,
right.
Like clearly we're doing some things right. And so it's like, did they just kind of put too much in their head at one time between everything else that was kind of going on? And that's kind of where I lean. I think, and again, I'm not like discrediting or saying it was a bad thing that they brought those players, but I think you could have just had the way that they spoke and got together, maybe could have been a little bit different. But again, for me, like it would be a hard time not letting my head fill up with all these thoughts of, well, am I doing things right? Are we actually a good team? We're on a 19-game win streak, but they're telling me this is what it takes to win a national championship. And again, I'm trying to like articulate this in the best way possible, but like those things like naturally kind of happen, in my opinion, whether you think those thoughts are gonna creep in or not. I think naturally when people are telling you all these things, but you're still successful at the same time, it's like, how do I put all this together and move forward with it, essentially? So at least that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I mean, like the #1 ranking, they they played Duke that same day, and they ended up beating Duke fairly handily. Again, close first half, but they dominated the second half against Duke, another ranked team. That's going to be one of the higher seeded teams in the NCAA tournament from the ACC, and they are the number 3 seed. And it's a team that Notre Dame would potentially see in the semifinals this weekend at the tournament, assuming they both win. But they get past that, then they go to Miami, they blow another team out, and it just, I don't know. Again, I think it's more. I don't know that it's necessarily all these different things, because there's been a lot of attention on this team from the get-go because of the fact that you had Hidalgo, who was so good last year, and you're getting Olivia Miles back, and they come back, and Miles is just like triple doubles, like back-to-back triple doubles early in the season, and all these different things happen. And so there's been a lot of attention nationally and locally on this team from the very beginning. So I don't necessarily think they got caught up in that. I just think that, like they just got caught in maybe, like getting away with some things during that win streak. And maybe it just did, feel too easy at times. And they just kind of stepped into a perfect storm for a couple games there where, they got attacked on some stuff that they, again, kind of got away with. And I think that ultimately it's going to be a silver lining for this team, that they kind of, got knocked a couple pegs. Like the only place where it could really ultimately hurt them is if they end up being a 2 seed rather than a 1 seed, because I think they're probably going to have to win the ACC tournament to still be able to get a number 1 seed at the NCAA tournament at this point.
Agreed.
All right, a lot of great questions there in
Mailbag.
In the mailbag tonight. Glad we did that. We got a lot of good stuff in there.